Put your video on if you're starting.
Mm-hmm. I'm just waiting for go live. The YouTube is still not showing it.
Yeah, it's live.
Hi, good evening, everyone. I can see 9 people waiting in our queue. So, welcome all to our first session of basic course in summer 2021. We are starting on introducing the healthcare IT, how it is different. My voice is coming double. Is it everybody having the
Y-
problem?
Yeah, there was a break in your voice, Komal.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So once again, I welcome all, and we'll be starting with our first session on healthcare IT is different. The session is going to be conducted. The lectures will be given by our leader, Dr. Pankaj and Dr. Balaji. So we'll get going with everyone. Uh, Towards, I would request everyone to just to post their questions or comments, feedback for the session in the chat window, and towards the end of the session, we'll be picking it up. So over to you, Dr. Pankaj.
Thank you, Komal. So, do we have everybody that needs to join, or do we need to sort of wait for people to sort of join? Should we just go ahead?
We have 11 people in our queue watching with the stream live stream,
Okay.
so we can
All right.
wait for we can start and people can see
Okay.
it.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Um, So our topic today is healthcare IT is different. Thank you very much for joining. This is going to be a series of sort of lectures where we are going to talk about digital health, starting from a very simple topic, but a little difficult to understand. Healthcare IT is different. Now, why is healthcare IT different? Healthcare and IT are two different paradigms. So is healthcare and management, and that is what has happened, where you brought in healthcare, uh, management and IT together to create digital health. And then I've had so many experiences all through my life wherever I created crossover teams. The digital health teams, now as it's called, whenever I brought in a healthcare and technology people together, the technology people didn't understand healthcare and healthcare people didn't understand technology. As a result, all that happened was pretty much fighting and no delivery, because that's what happens when nobody is able to understand each other. When I did this for the first time in my life, I was almost splitting my hair, and I was like, "What the heck is happening?" Over the years, I learned that this is the way to go, over and over and over again. Every time I created a new team, it was either an IT company gave me a bunch of IT folks, and then I got a bunch of healthcare folks, and then they expected that both of them will start talking each other's language within a short period of time. In healthcare and IT, that doesn't happen. It takes a long time for one to absorb the other. You may have seen this happen in many other industry verticals, in insurance, in banking finance, in manufacturing, in telecom, retail. A lot of these sectors, you bring in domain expert, you bring in a technology guy, and the technology guy will learn from the domain guy and start operating in a very short period of time. It doesn't happen in healthcare. It doesn't happen in healthcare. I will tell you. I mean, that is the entire presentation today. Why it doesn't happen, I'm going to tell you or try to explain to you why it doesn't happen. And then what are the, ways of making it happen? What are the different nuances or the fine nuances for making sure that, we don't stumble and fall? I have learned it by stumbling and falling again and again. It's not that, I've learned how to sort of navigate this in one day. So has my colleague Dr. Balaji. I know he had a very similar background where we stumbled, fell, learned to walk again, and out of 90% of out of 10 things that we may have done, 90% actually did not succeed. It's only the 10% that succeeded told us how to make the next one work better. So, Dr. Balaji, do you want to add anything to that?
I don't think so. Yeah, I think you pretty much said it all. Yeah, it's been quite a journey to realize that healthcare IT truly is different, very much different. As we go through this session today, we'll sort of get a glimpse of how we need to think about this elephant. So go ahead, Pankaj.
Thanks, Balaji. So, next slide. So, doctors are right brain creatures, so it is said. The reason being, the training in a medical college, pretty much, I'm saying doctors, but pretty much every clinician, even nurses and paramedics and everybody. So, it is a very different training as compared to engineers. In the engineering world, everything is driven by grids and numbers, whereas in a medical college, everything is subjective. I remember my days when, I being a dentist, when I joined the dental college, my professor first used to sort of show me, see, this is bluish, see, this is pale, see, this is red, this is, this is a different color, or, this is patchy, and this is glossy, and all that. All I could see was just red, pink. There was no difference between any of that. And this guy was able to look at the patient and say, this patient is pregnant, this patient has anemia, this patient has icterus, this patient has something else. All those things, my professor was able to do, and I was able to see only one color, which was pink, pinkish red, nothing else. But what happened was, over the next couple of years, it took about 4 years of training to reach a point where I was able to see what this guy was telling me in my first year. Now, this is the training. It's just an example of the training of a medical college. And, every specialty has their own nuances. So the same thing happens in ophthalmology, the same thing happens in gynecology. Gynecology is even worse. It is completely blind. Just like dentistry, you have to do a lot of blind procedures. Now, how do you do a blind procedure? You can pretty much close your eyes and do the procedure. It's like that. You train your fingers to see. So you can see everything through your fingers. So how do you train yourself to do that? See, this is a completely different paradigm as compared to grids and numbers training in an engineering college. Now, that is, why am I saying this? I'm saying this because what happens is, when you put these two different animals together, sorry for using that word animal, but when you put these completely different animals together, what are they going to do? They're obviously going to fight. Because if a doctor says slightly reddish, slightly rounded, slightly raised, and an engineer is going to say, okay, let me put an equation to it. Now, how are you going to put an equation to slightly reddish, slightly raised, slightly rounded? It's not possible. And then you go and tell an engineer that 2 plus 1 is not going to be 3 always. It can be 4, it can be 5, it can be 0. So engineer doesn't understand that language. Okay, another example. A plus B is equal to C. Now, not necessarily B plus A is equal to C. How do you explain this to an engineer? You cannot explain this to an engineer. There is no way. So I've had those long sessions with uh, very seasoned consultants sitting with me, trying to eat my head and say, what is this voodoo that happens in the doctor's brain to figure out that, this is the diagnosis? So, okay, there has to be a logic there. So let's put that logic on paper, and let's try to train an artificial intelligence or a rule based engine to sort of replicate what goes on in a doctor's brain. I mean, it was only after having done that couple of times with these highly trained, completely nerdy consultants, that I figured out that they're just completely going on a wrong path. It's just not possible. It is not possible because the way the doctor's brain works is by it's listing and ruling out the list. So you rule out everything, whatever remains at the bottom, that's most probably it. But it's most probably. And if you rule that out also, then what do? Start all over again. Then you put the list all over again and start ruling out. And continue until you find out what it is. Now tell an engineer this is the way to work. Engineers will say you're lunatics. Well, that's how a doctor's brain is trained to work. And if you have to make these two work together in a specialization called digital health, how are you going to ever do this? So I and some people like me, Dr. Balaji, a couple of others in our team, we were able to cross over from healthcare into technology. It's only when we crossed over from the right side of the brain to the left side of the brain, we were able to see how the other person thinks. But until we had done that crossover, we were not able to see the other's point of view. And that took us a couple of years. It didn't happen overnight. It took, actually, for me at least, it took, even after, I have a master's in computers and everything. But even after doing that, I was not a true crossover. It took me at least 5 years of stumbling and falling before I became a true crossover. So it doesn't happen overnight. It comes with a lot of struggle. So the point is that if the engineers don't understand you, majority of the forum today is doctors. So I'll say it's okay. I mean, don't get upset. So if you have to work together with engineers, they're not lunatic guys. They're not mad people. They're normal people. Just that they have a completely different way of thinking. That's all it is. So next slide. So this has been a common thing, as I said, in lots of teams that I've created, the domain expert and the IT team. So, one is talking one language, the other one understands another language, and, it doesn't work. So I've already pretty much covered it in terms of, we have to invest time. We have to make it work. It won't happen overnight. You will have to, and that is the reason I stress, whenever you create a digital health team, you have to bring in people who've been there, done that. So you bring in new people, the entire team is new people, there is nobody to guide. So a blind man is guiding another blind man. That's not going to help. So you need people in the team who've been there, done that. And one or two won't help. It'll have to be 50-50. So that's how digital health teams become successful. So I'll invite Dr. Balaji's comments if he has anything on this before I move forward.
Yeah, I would like to take an example that really taught me this. It's the environment where you really get a grip on this duality of the way engineers think versus the way doctors think is in the ICU. So 120/80 is a normal blood pressure for an engineer. Suddenly 120/80 becomes a hypotensive for a patient in the ICU. And when it becomes hypotensive, when it becomes normotensive, there is no way a doctor can actually explain to the engineer when that happens. It's based on past patterns, it's based on family history, it's based on, you know, I mean, there is an X factor that you sometimes just cannot explain. And engineers go mad with this. I mean, alarm is, should we set alarm for hypertension at 140? Should we set it at 135? Should we set it at 139? No, it's contextual. And then how do we set an alarm? I mean, the discussion has gone sometimes for weeks and months on such topics. Just an example where it really, really hits home when you're trying to design for an ICU environment.
Absolutely right. Depending upon so many factors, even 150, 100 could be normal.
Yep.
So, okay, next slide. So this is what I was talking about, the different ways of training. So just delving a little bit deeper into that thought process. See, the clinicians, in terms of lists and rule outs, a lot of intuition plays a role in that. Now tell a engineer that, make decisions based on intuitions, they're going to throw you out. But that's exactly what happens. Every doctor is trained in their medical college to trust the intuition, to develop the intuition to a point where the intuition is able to sort of make a lot of judgment, and of course intuition tempered with a lot of data, a lot of facts, but largely intuition. There was a time when we were trained. I mean, I don't know if that sort of training happens any longer in medical colleges, but we were trained when we used to be told clinical judgment is supreme. And if you don't have the labs, if you don't have the radiology, if you don't have anything else, still you should be able to treat. So you should be able to run your entire judgment based on what you find in the patient. And that is lots of course you have to do palpation, percussion, auscultation, this, that, but then ultimately it is your intuition. Ultimately it is how you feel that is the right diagnosis, the treatment plan. And then the treatment plan could vary from one doctor to the other, but the outcomes will not necessarily be very different. So again, the clinical protocols and some things are good, but at the same time, everyone has their own clinical judgment, everyone has their own ways of treating a patient, and each one is right. None of them is wrong. But that sort of a thing doesn't happen in an engineering world. In an engineering world, it is all based on data. It is all based on grids and numbers. So this is a discipline which sort of, again, if you have to make these two teams come together, or two different set of people come together, one is going to ask for hard data, is going to ask for grids and numbers. All the IT came from from manufacturing, so they sort of inherited their manufacturing paradigms, and then the management skills also came from technology, so they inherited all the manufacturing paradigms. All that is all grids and numbers. And the medical paradigm is completely based on data, rule out, and intuition. So that is the difference that I've already said. I just wanted to sort of re-emphasize it. I'll again invite Dr. Balaji's comment before moving forward.
It does. This part of it does appear at the superficial level to be sort of moving on in terms of real world, where so much of data is now available. So much of diagnosis and treatment is based on lab data. That it seems that well, it's no longer the case. But let me tell you, when and you know it better than as good as all of us, all of you know it. When you're in front of a patient and you make a decision and you make a diagnosis sometimes, and if you get an engineer to ask you on what basis did you make the diagnosis, it is a humongous effort to make an engineer understand why you went above and beyond the clinical guideline for that set of data. and you do it so often that it comes seamlessly to you, but it is actually not seamless. What you consider is as intuition is the subconscious amalgamation of a vast set of data, present and past, which you find it very difficult to convey to any engineer, because you don't have all of that at your conscious level many times. So really, systems that have to depend on their understanding of the working of intuition, though it may not be intuition completely, but it's an amalgamation of vast amounts of data. But how does the system gather those vast amounts of data? How does it process them? What are the rules of that? That is not clear to the engineering side of things. It takes a clinician, who has experience with engineering disciplines, who has worked in that mode, to really start the process of talking like that. Without that, they don't even understand what the engineer is asking. They'll say, I just knew it. I knew it from these five parameters. And the engineer will say, these five parameters are exactly the same from a patient A and patient B. Why did you make a different decision on diagnosis and different decision on treatment? And the doctor will inevitably find it difficult.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give one more example before we move to the next one. See, there was a paper recently published, or I read recently. It was a paper from Japan where they said that artificial intelligence was given a set of retinal scans, and artificial intelligence model was able to detect a whole lot of things that a human was not able to do. The best of the doctors were not able to do. When I sort of went deeper into the paper, it said, it was able to detect hypertension well, way early than anybody else clinically was able to. So I was just thinking that, okay, if it is able to say hypertension, I mean, okay, fine, but what do I do with it? If it is not clinically there, can I intervene? I cannot. Then what is that information relevant to me? I mean, okay, it's good information. What do I do with it as a clinician? Okay, maybe I can give it to a wellness expert and say, put him on a wellness program so that the person's hypertension gets delayed. All right, maybe. But other than that, a clinician really cannot do anything. So that's useless data for a clinician. Now, that is a problem with the engineers versus doctors. And it is really hard to explain. So I'm just trying to put it by examples. Next slide. Okay, so that brings us to the point of assembly line. So if you look at any other industry, it has borrowed all its processes, everything, pretty much everything from manufacturing. It's an assembly line model. So in a factory model or an assembly line model, what happens is every person is doing their own little bit. That person doesn't know what the next person is doing. And a lot of times people have tried to superimpose an assembly line on top of healthcare and said, well, it's an industry, apply assembly line. It doesn't work. It doesn't work for a couple of reasons. One, in an assembly line, what happens is when, say, a person is trying to tighten a nut and that nut is not getting tightened, what are the principles in assembly line? You're supposed to pick up that piece and put it aside on a separate assembly line, a separate line. Somebody will deal with it. You don't waste your time. You move to the next. And you are specialized in doing only that nut. If you are asked to go and weld something else, it doesn't work. You don't know that. Assembly line is not tuned for that. Now try doing that in healthcare. Healthcare is exactly that other line. It is not this main assembly line, because every patient that is coming in, there is a nut that is not getting tightened. And how long will it take to make you tighten that nut? You don't know. Can you leave it aside? नहीं, ये tighten नहीं हो रहा है, इसको छोड़ दो. Let it be. You can't do that. And if it requires welding, you are the guy who has to do the welding also. You can't say that I am a nuts guy, I can't do the welding. So it's a very different paradigm. When you superimpose assembly line on top of healthcare, it just doesn't work. But that is exactly what will happen is when you bring in engineers into healthcare, they will superimpose assembly line on healthcare. That is exactly what will happen when you bring in managers who are general managers and superimpose them on a healthcare. They'll start applying assembly line principles, Kanban, this, that, on top of healthcare. No, that doesn't work. I mean, okay, I should not say that doesn't work, but it doesn't work carte blanche. You have to temper it, you have to modify it, you have to apply it to healthcare in a very different way. It requires a whole lot of experience to be able to apply it to healthcare. It is not going to happen that you just apply it straight away. The vanilla principles of assembly line will definitely not work on healthcare. So again, before I move forward, I'll invite Dr. Balaji's comments.
It's a very beautiful topic because under the name of standardization, which is a very assembly line word, healthcare suffers a lot, and particularly in communication. So healthcare focuses on efficacy. Clinical healthcare focuses on outcomes, on effective outcomes. Assembly line focuses on efficiency. Um, Healthcare cannot function on efficiency alone. For all assembly lines, efficiency means efficacy. For healthcare, efficiency does not mean efficacy. It's not by default correlated. That is the key.
Yeah, that's interesting. Would you want to elaborate a little bit, Dr. Balaji, on that? Because I'm not sure everybody got it.
No, I think it'll come up in the next slide, Pankaj. There's a beautiful example coming up. If you make a process extremely efficient, it doesn't mean you serve the patient well. Quite the opposite. You can kill the patient literally if the process is too efficient. So
Yeah.
example coming up elsewhere, and
Sure,
we'll
sure.
get to that.
Sure, got it. Okay, so next slide. Okay, so another aspect of why healthcare IT is different. This is a financial aspect. Actually, in healthcare, um, the payer is the one who is paying for your healthcare. It could be an employer, it could be insurance, it could be government. In India, of course, there's an aberration. Lots of people are paying out of pocket, but that's an aberration. World over, there's always a payer. So somebody is paying for your healthcare. And why is the payer paying for your healthcare? Because the payer believes that by paying for your healthcare, the productivity will increase and you will be able to contribute back into the larger pool better. And that is the reason the payer is paying for your healthcare. But where is the benefit going? The benefit is coming to you. So the payer is not getting any direct benefit of paying for your healthcare. So it's a very different paradigm. In a transaction world, in a banking transaction, for example, you or you want to buy something, you want to buy a candy, you go and pay money and you get candy back. In healthcare, the payer doesn't get anything back. The payer is paying money, and what is he getting back? Nothing, just a notional satisfaction or a belief, not even a satisfaction, a belief that you will be better. The person who is a beneficiary will be better and will be able to contribute back into the larger pool in a more productive way. And when you bring in technology to help design solutions for this, it becomes even more difficult, because technology paradigms are always tuned. Who is the customer? The first thing an engineer will come and say, who is the customer? You tell them that the customer is the last person standing in the queue, the beneficiary. And who is paying? Paying is a person who is not even in the queue, he is somewhere hidden. So who is the customer? You tell the engineer that the customer is this guy standing in the queue, whereas the person who is paying for the project is someone who is somewhere hidden. Engineers don't understand this language. They just don't get it. I've had this again and again. I've had these conversations again and again and again. So every time they'll shake their head and go away, but they'll come back and ask the same question. So this is a huge paradigm shift in healthcare. So for them, whoever is the customer is the one who has to be serviced. In healthcare, the customer is the beneficiary, is the end beneficiary. The one who is paying for all of these services is not the customer. Again, I'll invite Dr. Balaji's comment before we move forward on this.
Yeah, this is. I'm sure you'll be wondering what impact this has on technology and IT. It has an impact when the beneficiary and the doctor don't have an incentive to use IT systems. The final paying customer is the payer, and the payer wants IT systems. But where is the incentive for the provider and the patient to use IT systems? They're not paying for anything. uh, and why should they use it where unless they see benefit? Why should they use it? So the the issue with cost and benefit going in the opposite direction is systems have to deal with people who get the benefits but don't incur the costs, and that is a thinking paradigm in terms of design of systems that requires a very different design.
Yeah, absolutely. You brought in a very interesting aspect in terms of adoption and change management. Why does majority of the healthcare IT system fail? This is exactly the reason that the beneficiary or the person who's your customer has no incentive to use your product. Absolutely no incentive, and doesn't even value your product. Forget about having any incentive to use. Doesn't even value. Many
Correct.
times doesn't even recognize your product and
Correct.
tells you that, you're an alien. Why are you even here? So this is a paradigm. It is very difficult for a technology person to understand, very difficult for a management person to understand, and it is very unique to healthcare. And if you have to build healthcare IT systems, unless you understand this very basic fundamental, your system will fail, guaranteed. Next slide, please. 80-20 principle, my favorite topic, because I've had some very personal experiences on this. So I have been a consultant. I've been working with multiple hospitals. There have been times where hospitals have engaged these top class consulting companies, and these top class consulting consultants, I mean, with due respect to them, they came, they studied the hospital, they had no idea what healthcare is. They looked at it and said, well, hospital is earning 80% of their revenues from 20% of the investments, right? So why does the hospital need to do the rest of the 80% investment? Don't do it, no? Simple. That's the fundamental principle on which any industry works. Why is a hospital different? Just don't invest. So you can run on. You were running on 100 rupees till last year, and earning say 100 rupees. But if we were to give you 20 rupees, you will be able to earn 80 rupees. That's very good. So we'll give you 20 rupees from next year. Just give us 80 rupees return. That's it. I mean, it's a wonderful math, right? But does it work in healthcare? It doesn't. Because the rest of the 80 rupees is spent in treating diseases that are going to give you only 20% of revenues. But you really can't get away from that. You just can't get away from that. So I'll give you another example. Treating a difficult pregnancy. Now, a difficult pregnancy is going to give you only that, whatever is the package, right? For the pregnancy, you're going to get only that much money. But the difficult pregnancy is going to take a lot of effort in terms of return and money and all that. It just doesn't work. And the second thing is, also the time and kind of effort. If you were to do simple math, is it even worth saving? So, if you were to do a simple math and the math says the chances of survival are only 10%, a good doctor will still try. Will say, all right, I'll try. But what will be a management paradigm? Forget it. So that is a huge issue. Another example, emergency medicine and high-end antibiotics. And this actually happened. I saw a report in which the management consultant had said that you don't use emergency medicine that often. You don't do the crash. You don't sort of crash the cart. You don't sort of, the crash cart doesn't get really used. You don't break the glass. High-end antibiotics, they are just lying there. They get expired. You don't use it. Why do you even keep it? Don't keep it. You don't need it on every floor. Keep it one somewhere. You use only once in a while, right? This was a recommendation. I actually saw it in one of the reports. I was like, oh my god. Oh my god. I mean, I really, I can't explain what I did. I really blew my top. I went and, uh, uh, created a hell. I said, just fire this consultant, remove them. They just don't understand the basics. The basics of healthcare are not that simple. You have to temper it with a whole lot of knowledge before you are able to do this. Yeah, I mean, I and Balaji can continue to talk on this forever. So I'll invite Balaji's comments before we move to the next one. Yeah.
I don't have anything here. You said it all. This is what I was talking about when I said efficiency versus efficacy. To achieve an efficacy of 80 rupees, it's not that you do 20 rupees. No, the remaining whatever 60 odd rupees is meant to support the effectiveness of the the service delivery of used by the 20 rupees. So without having emergency medicine stock, you cannot service the patient. Bottom line. So that efficacy versus efficiency is very on the assembly line is very clearly shown here. That the 80-20 rule management paradigm comes from the manufacturing, from the assembly line, and it causes severe problems when applied to healthcare. The classic example is expiry of emergency medicines.
Next slide, please. Okay, so see, humans are an evolving species. We are evolving. We are living animals. So is infectious diseases. The problem with engineers is they come and say, give me the release manual. Well, when you were born, your mother didn't give you a release manual. So, they will come and say, okay, if you are a machine, you're working well, then, you should have ABC in place. Well, not necessarily. There are too many variations. The animal is not evolving not only at every birth, but also while living, the animal is evolving. The evolution continues to happen constantly, and this is an evolution that you have to deal with. You have to respect it. It is going to be, if you understand this evolution, all biologists understand it, but engineers just don't get it. So, for example, there is a blockage of a coronary artery. Now it's a 50% blockage, or a 60% blockage. Now an engineer will say, okay, fine, put a stent. Whereas a good cardiac surgeon will say, okay, let's wait and watch. Maybe a collateral circulation will develop, and maybe you will not need it. Maybe there will be other factors that will take over. You may not need a stent. But then that's hard to explain to an engineer. So, and on the other side, the diseases, they are also evolving. Right now we are in a pandemic. We are seeing all the variants coming out every now and then. Now, and then I've had those questions from lots of my engineering friends. They come and say, why does this damn thing evolve? It is there, so we have found the antibodies to it, so job done. I said, no, the job is not done. It will continue to evade the antibodies. It will continue to figure out ways of evading. It will continue to evolve. It's a constant war. And this constant war is not just with the virus and the bacteria, but also it is with the vectors. So the vectors that carry it, fortunately, in this pandemic, there is no vector. But there is a medium, of course. It's the air is the medium, but there is no vector. But then there are vector-borne diseases, and the vectors are evolving. The vectors are evolving to sort of hoodwink all the methods of controlling those vectors, and they continue to evolve. Recently I heard somebody trying to genetically modify the vectors so that the vector population becomes sort of neutralized. I actually looked towards God and said, God save us, because that is engineer's mind really playing with the devil. I mean, I really don't know where those things are heading. So basically what I'm trying to say is that the humans are evolving, the diseases are evolving. Humans did not come with a release manual. The release manual comes with most of the engineering goods. They do not come with living organisms. So if you engineers have to work in healthcare, they have to learn to live with a a machine that doesn't have a release manual. Dr. Balaji, would you want to add in anything?
This should be a topic very close to your heart, Pankaj, because the classic example of this thinking has been the Human Genome Project. About 20 years ago, they said we will have the instruction manual for the human body, and they did have 20,000 genes or 200,000 genes. But they very very quickly figured out that there is no way they can have any close to any beginning of any instruction manual just by sequencing the human DNA. It's not going to happen. So I mean, that is a very very classic example of thinking something is the user manual, something is the technical manual in the human body, or the instruction manual. No, it's not going to happen. And I could go on this topic for quite a bit of time, but in the interest of time, that example is sufficient.
Yeah, absolutely right. Even after the Human Genome Project did its job, what they figured out was the proteomics was a completely different ballgame. So how does the protein come out from those from those genetic code? So they had to reverse engineer and figure out that there are too many permutation combinations. It's not straightforward. So yeah, perfect. Next slide, please. So this is the final example that we have here, where we are talking that, see, engineering paradigms have not evolved to a point where the processes will become dynamic. So they are not able to emulate a dynamic system which is healthcare. Now, in healthcare, what happens is it's very ubiquitous in nature. So the doctor is giving the order, and the order is getting executed almost simultaneously. It doesn't happen in any other industry. So doctors are ubiquitous. They could be anywhere in the healthcare system, and they could be giving orders, and it will be executed almost simultaneously. In any other industry, you will have an order department and an order fulfilling department. It doesn't happen in healthcare. It just cannot happen in healthcare. So the processes that has been sort of borrowed from all other paradigm management and IT paradigms and superimposed on healthcare are creating too much trouble in digital health. And this is my problem with most of the IT companies who jump into healthcare without knowing what healthcare is. They will bring their CRM, supply chain management, and all kinds of horizontal solutions, and superimpose on healthcare and say this will work. And they have all the conviction and say this will work. When it doesn't work, they say healthcare is too difficult, and then they shut shop and go away. So I've had these examples again and again and again, and if I start talking, then we'll run out of time. But I'll invite Dr. Balaji's opinion on that, and then we'll move to the next.
Yeah, this is part of the communication problem between healthcare professionals and technology professionals. All of this that we have discussed so far is not meant to state that healthcare we are right or somebody is wrong. It's just the fact that we need to appreciate the limitations of each industry, in the sense of the limitations of effective communication between these two thinking paradigms. And to that extent, we have to be aware and be patient on both sides. I would like to emphasize on that, because the way it's going on in terms of the discussion or the presentation, it does begin to appear to some people maybe that okay, technology doesn't understand. But no, we have to, if we have to be in digital health, we have to understand ourselves and then help others understand and help solve the problem on the ground. um, this is just one slide. Many slides came before that. So dynamism we'll talk about later. Subsequent slides are there, but I just want to make that point clear to all, in case the sort of emotion or feeling that is being communicated.
Sure, absolutely. So it's basically that one side doesn't understand the other. It doesn't mean that one side is right or wrong. So that's absolutely point taken. Uh, okay, next slide. So this is the ubiquitous nature of the work that I was talking about. That doctors and clinicians are ubiquitous in nature. They are everywhere in the healthcare enterprise, and they're giving orders, and it's being fulfilled almost simultaneously. This doesn't happen in any other industry. So if you bring a solution from any other industry and superimpose on healthcare, it doesn't work, because they'll come and say, okay, tell me where the orders are going to be given. Tell me where it is going to be fulfilled. What is the turnaround time for orders? And I've seen these, turnaround time for fulfilling the orders. So many of the managers will come and start putting those KPIs on hospitals. Whenever I look at it, I laugh. I said, I don't know, this is a person who's never seen a hospital. So that is the reason, you really can't have those turnaround times. So you don't have those KPIs. You really just cannot superimpose KPIs brought from any other industry onto healthcare, because the time lag between giving an order and executing it could be nanoseconds, or it could be hours. But both are right. None of them is wrong. So this is actually a long debate, but I just thought, healthcare IT is different. That is the reason that all over the world, healthcare IT degrees are given. Lot of different crossover degrees are given. The kind of degree programs that are there and lot of teaching programs that are there, you will not find that for many other industry verticals. It is only in healthcare IT, or now digital health as it's called, that you have these kind of training programs, or very, very specialized training programs. Next slide. Yeah, so this is basically the culmination of all of the discussion we've had. So there is a healthcare paradigm, there's a technology paradigm, there's a management discipline. All of them are unique in their own ways. What is really required is to have all the three in the same brain. Unless you have all the three in the same brain, it will not work. If you put a management guy, a technology guy, and a healthcare guy together, it can, that sort of a paradigm can work in many other industries, but in healthcare, it just doesn't work. And that is exactly the reason why we are trying and putting all these efforts to try to put that knowledge in the same brain, trying to see that, seed that knowledge in the heads of healthcare people, and hope that the seed will grow. Because unless uh, all this knowledge is actually gathered, processed in the same brain by the same processor, it is not going to be of use.
Yeah. So it truly, this is very, very important. The whole point of this initial session is to set the stage for understanding that if you're a healthcare professional, you should go and understand how technology functions, at least at a bare minimum level, so that you know the constraints of the thinking of the person opposite you when an engineer comes and meets you. You understand the limitations and the constraints under which the engineer functions. If you're an engineer, you should understand the complexity and the diversity and the resilience and the dynamism of the biological entity you're dealing with, at least at a level where you can say, okay, I don't know and I need to explain, I need to understand both sides. Therefore, this discipline of digital health is very, very important to the healthcare industry, because without that there will be this constant friction and conflict between technology and the domain, and which will not benefit anybody finally. We have seen that in COVID, and this is the reason for our existence, that we want to send this message across for healthcare professionals. Please learn basic technology, please learn basic concepts of engineering, basic concepts of information technology, and engineers, please learn the basic concepts of healthcare and healthcare management and clinical discipline. Then the conversations will become meaningful. This extreme problem of adoption will start fading away, and we will really be able to benefit patients.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji. I think that sums up pretty much everything that we wanted to say. Next slide, and I think that's a closing slide. Yeah, so this is a beautiful quote from Florence Nightingale, which basically says that, clinicians can do their bit, but what really heals the patient is not really the medicine. It heals, there is something else that heals the patient. And it's very beautifully said there. We'll just end at that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Balaji. Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. That was a very insight session. So, any questions, any feedback, please, you can write it on the chat and we can pick it up from there. So one feedback we have from NAB is that since this is a first class, can you please tell us what this course is all about? So sure. So Dr. Pankaj, do you want to answer, or this is more like we are bringing healthcare and IT together?
Yeah, so this is exactly what we were trying to convey in the last slide, that we are trying to seed the knowledge, the healthcare technology and management knowledge in the same brain. We're trying to seed it. We're trying to sort of create a process where experts are built, who will be called as health informaticians, or people who will be digital health experts. But then, even if you don't want to become an expert, if you want to function going forward in a healthcare enterprise, gone are the times when you would find in any healthcare enterprise that doesn't have digital health built into it. And very soon things are changing in India too. We have the National Digital Health Blueprint, we have the National Digital Health ecosystem coming up, we have the whole paradigm of social media, mobile analytics, artificial intelligence, Internet of Medical Things, all penetrating, coming and sitting in your pocket through your mobile. So you really can't avoid it. And as professionals who are working in healthcare, this becomes an essential part of your skill. And the way we are designing these programs is that you become the experts who go and teach further up. So you have to become the trainers for digital health. So we are trying to sort of get that knowledge to you. You become the trainers, and you go and train other clinicians to become digital health experts.
Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. So that was the only question, only point we had, not a question actually. If there is anything else anybody wants to add to the session, you can please write in the chat and we'll pick it from there. So I think there is no other question answers. We are good. So welcome again. This was our first session. I would like to thank Dr. Pankaj and Dr. Balaji for conducting and sharing your experience and knowledge, which was like much in detail and giving us an oversight. Thank you very much. And we'll be sharing the link of this record with all of you, and you can also share it with others. And we'll already have scheduled a couple of sessions, and we'll go from here.
Thank you, Komal. Thank you, Dr. Pankaj. And please feel free to write in, question, seek more information, because, as Pankaj said, you viewers are the vanguard of the change. Uh, we can only help you, but you actually have to go out and teach this new paradigm to everybody out there. You are the educators.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you in our next session on Monday. Thank you.